Hi guys, I just wanted to make a quick vid today to address a few comments that I had on other vids that I think are worth responding to, and I also want to touch on a huge issue. A few things I want to touch on, but another one is the huge issue I see with the fake truth movement of social media dependence. But the first thing I want to talk about is compulsory schooling and the Industrial Revolution a little bit more because I don't think people really understand how they were used to completely change the way society had previously worked. And it wasn't something that the population was asking for or wanted or that benefited them. It was all forced on you by, like, everything that you're doing today was decided over 100 years ago by some industrialist. Basically, I mean, literally, that's what it comes down to. The life you were living was decided a long, long time ago by some rich fucking scumbag that wanted to control everything they could. And that's what the Industrial Revolution brought us. And I don't agree with Jordan Peterson pretty much about anything. This was an older vid he did. I think he's changed his opinion somewhat because I've heard later stuff that kind of contradicts this. But just listen to what he says here. What he says here is very, very accurate. And I'm going to say up front, I think he's a scumbag. I think this was before he sold his soul for whatever reason. For wealth, probably. But I just want you to listen to what he says here because this is very accurate. And I'm surprised that I even found this.
I also think that it was probably an idea that was more relevant during the mid to late stages, say, of the development of the Industrial Revolution, because to work in a factory meant something very different than to work as a peasant. First of all, if you were working in a factory, you became bound by time in a way that human beings had never been bound by time. You know, we time everything. Seconds mean something to modern people. You know, but it took a long time for the idea that time was of the essence for the organizing of human life. And a lot of that occurred as people moved into the factories. And so you can see, for example, the legacy of that in the modern pre-university school systems, because the school systems that most of you attended with their rows of desks and their buzzers and their bells and their recesses are basically factory structures that emerged from the Industrial Revolution that were characteristic of the way that working people who worked in factories organized their lives. So the bells that go off between periods and to announce that it's noon and to tell you that school's out, those are factory bells. And so you can see echoes of Freud's idea that the superego and the ego and the id are in conflict by imagining, for example, how difficult it is for a very active 6-year-old, especially if they're male, to sit quietly and regulate themselves by the bell for 6 or 7 hours, you know, when they first go to grade 1. And the fact that, you know, Freud would say, if he was alive, that the reason that so many people have attention deficit disorder is because the demands of the superego, so to speak, in the school system are so excessive that the clash produces pathology. Now, the pathology is obviously defined by the situation. If you define pathology as being unable to sit down and pay attention to things that are deadly boring while you should be running around playing and having fun and wearing yourself to a frazzle, then that's pathology. That's attention deficit disorder. And you can treat it with Ritalin, but that's only because you can treat anybody with Ritalin, you know, as I'm sure many of you know. So, you know.
So while he's focusing on ADHD here, but what I'm saying is that the Industrial Revolution and the compulsory schooling are the cause of 90% of the mental illness that we're currently dealing with in our society. And the Industrial Revolution is responsible for 90% of the physical illnesses that we're now dealing with on a large scale, like the cancers and all that kind of stuff from society. And I said that before in previous vids, but I had never heard one of these internet shrinks come out and say that that's where the problem started. But he is very right that this all started, all these mental illnesses started when people were taken away from their homesteading lifestyles that they've been living for thousands of years and then forced into these very rigid system of control that was controlled top down by bankers and industrialists, which are the same thing. So that it's important to understand that there's a reason that so many people are having mental issues and they're having these mental problems, and it's because they were taken so far out of their natural environment and been forced to live this button pusher lifestyle where all they have to do is just push a button for a certain amount of time. They don't have to have and they don't have to have any connection to the natural world or their own survival or their survival on the planet. All they're going to do is they're just going to push a button a certain amount of times and file papers a certain amount of times and blood pressure a certain amount of times, and then their masters are going to give them little biscuits that they can go trade in for other people's labor. And I mean, that's pretty much what we're dealing with here. And like when I look at I live near a good bit of Mennonite and Amish people, and when I look at their communities, I'm so proud that they were able to hold this system at bay. I mean, just think about it. Imagine as a community being able to like hold this beast system at bay and just have your little own community that is self-sustaining and can still survive within this. I mean, it takes a huge amount of fortitude and will on a community level to be able to do what they did. I have so much respect for them. I think that I don't think that this industrial revolution helped any of us at all. I don't think we're any happier for it. I don't think we're any healthier for it. And I certainly don't think we're any more enlightened for it. I think all it was good for was putting the wealth in the hands of a very few people and then having them top down control every aspect of all of our lives. But I have seen some positive signs. And this is why I have no respect for these influencer shills, whether it's him or Rogan or the thousands of other of these shillfluencers that know exactly what the problem is, but they go through so much effort to avoid talking about it. And I really wish more people would talk about this because what I'm going to read you right here from these couple comments, and I've been seeing more and more comments like this, and it makes me happy that people are starting to understand what's going on. And what I'm going to read you here is how, and I had somebody a couple weeks ago say to me, how could so many people be manipulated for so long? And the reason why that was possible is because people didn't know that they were being manipulated, or at least 95% of the people had no clue that their minds were being molded, because there was techniques being used to mold their mind that they weren't aware of. And that's the most important thing. And like, that's when I say that people have been mind controlled for generations, like, I'm sure some people like laugh and are like, yeah, all right. But literally it's the case. Most of the population, 90% plus, have totally had their whole thought process and their whole belief about themselves and the world spoon-fed to them by stuff like this. And I'm just going to read it to you. And it goes back to those Bernays quotes that I made in my last vid as well. But I'm glad to see that there's other people that are putting this type of comments on YouTube. And I've been seeing a couple like this. It says, we must really thank, he's being sarcastic, we must really thank the UK's behavioral insight team and their team of online shillfluencers for their part in molding the behavior of the British public throughout this pandemic. Also not forgetting the British Army's 77th Brigade of the 6th United Kingdom Division, the 13th Signal Regiment, GCHQ, the Tavistock Institute, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, and Sage Psychologists, as well as many others I've not mentioned. their tactics, tenacity, and their overall ability to control the narrative by flagging and removing dangerous comments and misinformation online, as well as creating fake scare stories, is what is really helping us to achieve our overall agenda. And there are only some of the UK institutes that are manipulating everybody's reality. If you times that by 1,000, that's what's going on in the US. So just understand that and this has been going on for a century, where there is people actively trying to guide public opinion from backstage. And they use techniques that nobody really understood until recent times. That's why they've been able to get away with this for so long. And that's why so many people are living in a fantasy reality and don't understand that everything they believe for generations has been implanted into their heads. And there's another one here. There's one more I want to read that's on the same lines, but I think it's a good one to read as well. Right here. This one I got on my phone. The Behavioral Insight Team, BIT, also known officially as the Nudge Unit, is a UK-based global social purpose organization that generates and applies behavioral insights to inform policy and improve public services. Following nudge theory, using social engineering as well as techniques in psychology, behavioral economics, and marketing, the purpose of the organization is to influence public thinking and decision-making in order to improve compliance with government policy and thereby decrease social and government costs related to inaction and poor compliance with policy and regulations. The Behavioral Insights team has been headed by British psychologist David Halpern since its formation. And this is why I have no respect for Jordan Peterson or any of these other people that are putting themselves in front of you and pretend to be shrinks trying to help you. Any shrink or any supposed social media influencer that is trying to, and there are some that are pushing this. I'm not saying that nobody's pushing this information, but there's a lot of the biggest ones aren't. They're not pushing it. So, and they leave it like, there's a couple that like Rogan will never say anything like this. Peterson, like this is the information that people really need to understand, and that will help people who don't understand how their whole reality could be created for them for generations. And that it's not even really their fault that they're mind controlled. It's actually their grandparents and great grandparents' fault that they're mind controlled. And it's not even their fault because they didn't even know that these type of things were being done to manipulate their consciousness. I mean, some people did, but the majority of people did not. And I mean, I think those two posts were really good at showing how you can create reality for generations for people, and that them not have any clue as to how it's being done, because the only thing that changed now is the mechanisms that are being used. This type of same shit has been going on since the beginning of PR. So that's all I want to say. Okay, so the next thing I want to touch on is the schooling again. And I had somebody comment and say, well, if kids don't go to school, they're just going to be stupid and not know how to do anything. And you got to have some sort of educational system and higher education and higher learning. And I'm not against higher learning. I am all about intelligence and trying to use your intelligence to come to terms with this reality that we're existing in. But what I'm not for is handing 5 to 13-year-olds away to state institutions to have them work on your child's mind. Any institution, whether it's religious, state, any. The only people that should be educating your children at their most impressionable years are their family. And what I'm getting at is that the only thing that a child needs to understand in this current age in order to teach themselves is reading and basic math. And once you teach a child those two things, reading and basic math, they have the ability to educate themselves in any way that they want. In any area that they want, they can explore anything with those two skills. And to teach your child to read and do basic math would only take a matter of 2, 3, 4 years to get them to be able to teach themselves. And instead, what school's being used for is to just school isn't making you any more intelligent than what you were born with. All it's doing is they're giving you certain skills that they need to fulfill the needs of industry and society as they see fit. And see, the one thing that people don't understand is that when the compulsory school, it's not just the public schools. I see so many, like every time I see somebody bashing schooling, they always want to bash public schools. And I went to a Catholic school, grade school and high school, and let me assure you, and I also went to a public high school, and there's really, the only thing that was different, well, I will say this, the Catholic school was far, far ahead, curriculum-wise, than the public school. But as far as the social the social cues that they want you to take away from school, they were all the same. Still had to stand there and recite a silly spell before you start anything. And in the Catholic school it's even worse because we had to say some other magic spell, and then we had to do the state magic spell. So you get like the double whammy. But the point that I want to get is that once compulsory schooling was started in the U.S. around 1850 on, any other kind of schools that existed, because there were some schools before that, church schools and stuff like community schools, all that stuff was forced into a very stringent curriculum. And it was done by Carnegie and the Rockefellers and a whole bunch of other of these industrialist scumbag fuckwads that basically ruined our society, were the ones that were setting up the school system. So just understand, it's not just the public schools. The public schools are there to create one product, and that's basically the bottom of the barrel, manual labor, McDonald's workers, and low income people. Basically, that's what the public schools were there to fulfill. The interests of the labor of these industrialists. And then what you had with the Catholic school, where I went to, they were being trained, and I could see this now, even looking back on it, because what happened is that my Catholic high school closed when I was in 10th grade, and then I went to a public high school in 11th grade, and they were teaching the kids stuff that we had learned in 8th grade, pretty much. And the point that I'm trying to make is that what they're using these different institutions for is they're all trying to fill a different slave order following spot in society. So the public schools are the labor, and what the Catholic schools were used for is they were trying to be like, they were managerial positions. So basically the Catholic schools were set up so that they could they would be there to manage, say, 20 or 30 public school. Now, I'm not saying this is all like it all works out. You can move in between. I mean, intelligent people can move in between and learn things on their own. So I'm not saying this is set in stone, but what I'm saying, what was set in stone are the demographics that these schools were trying to fulfill. And so the Catholic schools, they were there as like managerial, mid-level managerial positions. Like they'd have 20 public school people working under them once they got into the job force. And then what you have on top of that are these private schools. And they're where the Bushes and the Gates and all these people that want to control everybody's reality for their whole life, that's where they go. And what you need to understand is that those people's schooling, that's all part of the same slave system. Those people are also slaves. They're rich slaves, but without their money, they'd shrivel up and die. So, I mean, you got to understand, like, the whole thing is set up, the schooling system is set up to put people into certain groups and then use those groups to kind of shape society in the way that they wanted it to be shaped, as far as like levels on the pyramid from the top down. So you got the public school kids that just get piddly jobs, that pushing buttons, and then you get the managerial Catholic type of school kids that they'll be managing 20 button pushers, filing papers for 20 button pushers basically. And then you got the private school kids who just basically they just coordinate the whole system of control. And none of them are a benefit to intelligence on a whole. They're actually, in my opinion, the schooling system, even the colleges at this point, I mean, I'd say 70% of the stuff that people go to college for now is just nonsense. There's no need to have any sort of college education for it. It's only for a little piece of paper that gives you permission to work in a certain field. Doesn't mean they're any smarter. I mean, it's just the whole, and people need to understand that your best bet at being a full, enlightened individual is to educate yourself every single minute of every single day of your life. And that is the best way that you can educate yourself, is to take in everything that's coming around you with an open mind and try and rationalize it and come to conclusions about why things are the way they are. The last thing you want to do is, now, and I'm not saying that the opinions of other people in the past aren't worth listening to. They most certainly are. And I base a lot of my beliefs on stuff that I've heard other people talking about in the past. But I would never just take something that somebody said as fact without having some sort of experience in my real life that would let me also conclude that I agreed with that person. Like, I would never take anything as fact just because some other person wrote it down. I would need to have some sort of evidence in my own life that I could bounce off of it to come to a rational conclusion about a subject. So that's all I wanted to say, is that I'm not anti-intelligence or anti-education. What I am, just so everybody understands, is I'm anti-giving your children to institutions that were created with the intention of enslaving your mind for life. And you're physically and mentally enslaving you for life, because they want you to go into the labor force and just go chasing that paper for 65 years of your life. But that's all I wanted to say, is that I'm not anti-education or intelligence. I'm anti-giving your children to strangers during their most impressionable years. So that's pretty much all I want to say about that topic, because I think it was worth answering, because I'm all about learning and intelligence. But what I'm not about is indoctrination and mind control. All right, so that's all I want to say about that. Okay, so the next thing I want to touch on is the extreme cognitive dissonance in the fake truth movement of social media dependence. And the one thing I want to say is that the truth community that is supposedly on the internet and on social media, I've never seen a group of people that have such a severe case of cognitive dissonance. So, I mean, I don't know what's worse, to be honest, because you have a large percentage of the population who are just completely have been mind controlled for generations, and they have no idea about it at all. They're just completely oblivious as to how their reality has just been created for them for generations. And then there's another group of people, these and I mean, a lot of it is because they're trying to make a living on the internet doing this. So you kind of got to compromise reality in order to do that. But so what you have is you have people that think that they understand reality, or they claim to understand reality and what's going on, but they want to close their eyes at all the other aspects of reality that they are dependent on. And just to give you a brief, I want to use Really Graceful as an example. Now, just to be straight, I think the last two videos that Really Graceful did were decent videos. And I like to give, I don't think she's pure evil, but I just don't think she's, I mean, how long have we been going through this for? How many years have these social media people been doing this? And what has actually changed in that time other than her bank account? So that's how I'm going to leave that. It doesn't, I'm not trying to single you out, Grace, but I'm just trying to be real here. How many more years are we supposed to watch this stuff? We all know, we all already know. You're not telling us nothing we don't know. Well, some of the shit you're telling is bullshit, and I'll get to that in a minute. But waving that flag like they love, as tyranny falls upon the land, wave that flag. But so here's the problem, and I'm going to use other people as an example. So I'm not just picking on Grace. I'm going to pick on other people too. But like I said, I think she put a lot of good information out in this vid and in the last one she did about Zionism. And I think me and Really Graceful have a bond over hating Ben Shapiro, because she had played some nonsense that clown said, and as soon as you bash Ben Shapiro, you kind of becoming one of my friends. But I just want to point out a few things here, because it's very obvious to see how some of these people have two realities going on in their mind at the same time, and they both contradict each other. So what she does in the beginning of this video is go through and say how in 1871 and with the birth of Washington, D.C., the United States was taking over private banking cartels. And then in 1913, it was solidified with the Federal Reserve. And after that, it was just tyranny and not with the founding fathers. Basically, what she's saying here is that after 1913 in the Federal Reserve, it's not what the founding fathers had ever wanted, or it was not part of their plan. And the problem with this law, and it's just so people do not want to step out of the fantasy reality that they live in. They're so comfortable with their grocery stores that the industrialists created for them, and all the other stuff that these industrialists created for them. They're so addicted to it that they have two realities going on in their mind at the same time. And so the point that I want to make here is that, so Grace's whole thing here is that after the Federal Reserve in 1913, we were completely usurped, and it was nothing that the founders would have agreed to. Okay, I'm willing to somewhat agree with that. I'm willing to somewhat concede to that the Federal Reserve was a huge shift. I don't think it was. We also had the First Bank of the United States, which I went over before, which was privately funded as well. So she's kind of lying in this vid a bit by saying that it wasn't until the Federal Reserve that private banks had their hands in the U.S. It's not true. Private hands had their hands in the bank since the First Bank of the United States, but I'll let her go with that. But what I won't let her go with is the fact that she's sitting here saying how that the country was doomed in 1913, right? The only problem with that is that this magical capitalist utopia that she constantly alludes to and talks about and worships, that is the American mom and pop social media influencers and mom and pop store shops and all that stuff. The problem is, Grace, is that none of that shit happened till after 1945 and the World War II and the Industrial Revolution. So, and this is where I got a problem. You can't have it both ways. You can't. Take off the blinders and you have to look at reality for what it is. So you either like what these private bankers and industrialists did to our society, or you don't. You can't have it both ways. Okay? Either you want to be real rich and you want to pay poor people to grow your food and all the other benefits that the Industrial Revolution and the birth of the wage slave created, or you don't. So it's so hard to get through to these people. They don't understand. And it's just so funny. So she worships aspects of what she believes about this country as far as the mom and pop capitalists. But none of that happened till after this tyranny, this supposed tyranny that the founding fathers never wanted. None of that happened till after that. So it's just these people are they're so mind controlled by their own comfort that they make up all sorts of shit in their mind to try and legitimize the fact that they want to be. Most of these people that are on the internet and pretending to be against this system, they don't actually want to be against this system. There's half of this system that has been created for them that they love, and they don't ever want to let go of it. And I just find it very interesting that this is a good example of it, because she's one that constantly goes on about the mom and pop capitalism and go capitalism, and mom and pops is what this country was built on. But the problem is it goes completely against what she's saying right here. As far as what she's saying right here is that after 1913, this country was nothing like what the founders had intended. So, like I said, you can't have it both ways. You gotta, please, all of you social media shillfluencers in the truth movement, you can't have it both ways. You can't. Either, I'll put it to you another way. If the only connection that you want to have to the natural world is to do some little task for money and then use that money to buy your way and buy other people's labor, if that's the lifestyle that you want, and I'm not even going to blame you for it, but if that's what you want, then just be fine with what you have, because that was created for you by other people. You would not have that luxury if there was not industrialists and appointed authority figures that set up that system and those stratifications in society of wealth and non-wealth that would force people that don't have as much resources as you to cook your food or grow your food, or if you're not willing to part with any of the conveniences that your industrialist masters have created for you and the system of control that they've created for you, then just be happy with it. Don't pretend to be against it. Don't pretend that you don't like being enslaved and dominated, because without their system, you would shrivel up and die. And most of these people don't have any desire to live outside the system that these industrialists and appointed authority figures created for them. They do a lot of lip service about how bad they are, but just think about it. How many years has Graceful or James Corbett or Alex Jones or I'm going to say True Stream Media, even though I do like them, but they're still part of this. I still think they're in cognitive dissonance about the situation. And like, the reason that I'm saying this is because how many years do they expect to try and use this as a solution? Do you know what I mean? Like, how many years are we supposed to watch this stuff for? I mean, it's getting old at this point, and it's all the same. It's all the same material. And you know what it is? And it's the reason that she's got 403,000 subscribers and I have 300 subscribers. The reason is because nobody wants to actually do anything to fix the problems. They certainly don't want to change their own lifestyle, and they're not willing to do anything short of trying to make videos about it and tell you. I mean, we've heard this stuff for 20 years now from these people. I mean, Alex Jones has been going for 20 years. And I mean, she's been going for 15 years. True Stream Media has been going for 15 years. James Corbett, he's probably been going for almost 20 years. Now, where is the change? And what I'm getting at is that you can't remain dependent on the system that your industrialist overlords created for you and pretend to be mad and hate your industrialist overlords. Okay? So it's just unbelievable, the cognitive dissonance that people have. Like, if you that you're gonna make videos of stuff that we all know, or at least anybody watching them already knows. I mean, and it's just true. I see so much cognitive dissonance in the truth movement. It's really amazing, actually. Because they're the only people that hold two separate realities. And one of them, and the thing that keeps them separate is their own dependence on the system that was created for them. So, like, if you didn't have, I'm just going to put it to you simply. If we didn't have this appointed authority and these industrialists and these overseers that coordinate our whole society and control all the money and stuff, you wouldn't be able to sit at home making videos on the internet and force strangers to produce goods and services for you. So if you want to sit around and push buttons on the internet and make little videos on the internet, and that's the only connection you want to have to nature, the natural world, and your own survival, then just enjoy the system as it is. Don't complain about it. Don't pretend to be against it. Don't pretend to cry baby about it and that it's not what you want, because it's exactly what you want. I mean, if you can't have both. You can't have all the benefits that have come from these people coordinating society and pretend that you don't want them coordinating society, because your ability to have no connection to the natural world and your own survival is only made possible by your overseeing overlords. So just please understand that. The cognitive dissonance I see in the fake truth movement it's worse than any other part of YouTube. And the one other thing I want to talk about too is the founding fathers. And this goes back to and the starts of this country for that matter as well. This goes back to the same thing that I said previously about I'm not one to just read something out of a book and just without seeing any evidence of it in reality, and just buy something without seeing any sort of physical evidence in the real world. And I'm just going to get to I want to touch on the founding fathers, because I heard, like, True Stream Media had made a pretty good vid the other day, and at the very end, she started in with the founding father and what this country was meant to be, and the founding father worshiping. And it's just like it's like a crutch for these people. It really is. It's just something that they can hold on to, so that they that they believe that. I don't understand the whole founding father worship, to be honest, because, and I'm just gonna a few simple things to prove it. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna a few simple things that I observed with my like, just from researching the past, that don't really jive with the founding fathers and the starts of this country being what they claim it is. And the one thing is that trying to think of how to put it. When the Constitution was ratified, and see, this is what people don't get. When the Constitution was ratified, there was less than 18%. I've already covered this in other vids, but people nobody wants to talk about this. Why don't I ever hear Really Graceful talking about this? Because she's a woman, she should certainly have an opinion on it, because she wouldn't have been able to vote during the starts of this country. And it's so humorous how people latch on to things that have been ingrained into them from their schooling about men in the past. Like, so when the Constitution was ratified, less than 18% of the adult population was eligible to vote due to land, debt, race, and sex restrictions on voting. And see, that's the first thing that kind of makes me question the whole thing, because what that leads me to believe then is that what it really was, it wasn't freedom for all. It was freedom for a bunch of Bill Gates type men that wanted to claim ownership of a ton of land that they just stole. And and that's what I view it as. I mean, that's my view of the starts of this country. Like, people are, like, I saw a stupid meme the other day about immigration, and they showed, it was the image of, like, people standing in a room with doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and they were like, immigration in the past. And then underneath of it, there was a whole bunch of people climbing up a wall, which was photoshopped image anyway, but it was a whole bunch of people climbing over the wall, a whole bunch of people climbing over the Mexican wall down there, and they were like, immigration now. But the whole thing is which way do you think Columbus got here? Which way do you think the founders got here? Like, people are so willing to just, it's cognitive dissonance. It really is. The fake truth movement has the worst case of cognitive dissonance out of everybody on the internet. It's so unbelievably provable. It's crazy. So they want to believe. And the other thing too is that, like, people want to pretend that, like, the revolution was a war between like all the common folk, all the poor people just decided that they didn't want to pay taxes to England anymore. Like, people don't get it. Wars only start when rich people fight with each other. Okay, it has nothing to do with you. The people who didn't want to pay taxes to the king were George Washington with his big plantations and all the other ones. These were all. It's just unbelievable that people don't see that what the founding of this country was is not what it's sold as to anybody at all. Like, they want you to believe that it was like for the common man. No, it wasn't. It was for rich white people that just stole a bunch of land and wanted to make it their own land without having to pay taxes to a king. That's what it was. So let's not get it twisted here, okay? And I mean, just like people, like you see where the Constitution says like different areas where it's like, and even in True Stream Media where she had said something in the end about freedom for all, and it's just like, you mean freedom for all the rich landowners is what it really was. That's what it was. There was no freedom for all. Only the top 18% of the population and landowners were eligible to vote and even have an opinion. So, I mean, if you want a society, I mean, it's just people are so, and like having slaves, like, so if they were worried about the freedom for all, then how are they genociding Indians and having African slaves? Like, see, and people don't want to look at that. They want to like pretend that like they can coexist at the same time. Like there can be a freedom utopia at the same time as enslaving Africans and killing Native Americans and stealing land. These people are so far gone, and I'm getting a little hyped because it really aggravates me that like, and the reason that they have so many followers is because there's that many other people that don't want to actually fix the problem. They just want to know that they're being enslaved, and they want to be told that they're being dominated and enslaved over and over and over again. But they don't actually want to do anything at all about it. At all. Zero. None of them. None of them want to do anything about it. They all want to remain dependent on this system that was created for them by appointed authority figures and industrialists. You can't have it both ways. If you won't, if the only connection, I'm going to say it one more time, if the only connection you want to have to the natural world and your own survival as a human in the natural world is pushing buttons of some sort on a keyboard or any other job for that matter, if that's what you want to do, then just like be okay with the system you got. Don't pretend to be against it, because there would be no employees. You wouldn't be able to force people to make you a taco for some paper that you got from pushing buttons on a computer if it wasn't for this system. So just understand that. And the founding father thing it's really getting old to me because it's so weak the way these people latch onto it. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, to be honest. I guess it's just from years and years of schooling, but you can clearly see if you look back to that time that it wasn't some freedom utopia. There were only less than 18% of the people were allowed to vote because of race, sex, debt, and other restrictions that were put on voting. So the only people that were given a say, so it would be like I said before, it'd be like taking the top 18% of rich people in the population right now and letting them control everything. Nothing has really changed. And what happens is that like I feel like there's like a lot of it's like mystery and like it's like the fantasy of the founding, and they've been told these stories over and over, but they don't actually think about what was going on the ground at that time. And like, how did those things really come about? And who were they really to benefit? Were they to benefit the natives that have been here for how many years? No, they weren't. Were they to benefit the black slaves that were being whipped to pick cotton? No, it was all done by the top 18% of people that wanted to create these mass amounts of wealth and have slaves, basically, which is, it's just the same thing we got now. It's just now that they're not called slaves, they're called employees. But it's very frustrating for me. I've been finding it more and more frustrating to have to listen to some of this gibberish that these people spew, because it's not based in any reality. That's all I want to say. Take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.